When Lauren and Brandon welcomed their first child, they harbored concerns about entrusting their precious bundle to their two Dalmatians. These loyal canines had, after all, been their first fur babies. However, circumstances compelled them to leave their infant with the dogs in an unforeseen emergency, leading to an unexpected discovery. Lauren and Brandon's love story unfolded like a modern-day fairy tale, a serendipitous encounter at the dog park that changed their lives forever. Both of them, accompanied by their cherished Dalmatians, found themselves at the park simultaneously. Dalmatians, known for their striking beauty and intelligence, were an unusual sight in their city, making their meeting all the more exceptional. The allure of these spotted canines became the catalyst for a delightful conversation. From the moment they exchanged words, an undeniable connection ignited. Their bond swiftly transformed into a whirlwind romance, a journey neither could have foreseen. Lauren had shared her life with Finn for over 3 years, while Brandon's loyal companion, Brody, had been by his side for 5. Their dogs became inseparable, their camaraderie so strong that Lauren and Brandon often humorously speculated about a clandestine romance brewing between Finn and Brody. As their relationship deepened, Brandon took a heartfelt leap, proposing on bended knee. From that moment on, their love story was etched into the annals of history. They were so excited to start their lives together that they were in dire search of the right home for their little family when the conditions changed. Lauren found out she was pregnant. It was the dogs that told her first. They kept walking around with Lauren wherever she went, refusing to leave her alone at any time. So, when she took the test and it came back positive, their strange behavior started to make more sense. Naturally, Lauren and Brandon were over the moon at the news. They were so excited at the prospect of being parents to their first baby, but there was something lurking in the back of their minds. How would Finn and Brody react to the child? The problem with having such a strong relationship with your dogs is that they sometimes end up feeling like they are the center of attention. This attitude can become dangerous when you add to the equation a new focus of attention like a newborn. While Dalmatians are lovely dogs, they too have quite a possessive and protective nature. This was the main concern for the couple. How were the dogs going to react? Would they accept the newborn as a new member of the family, or would they feel threatened and disregarded? During the whole pregnancy, Lauren invested a lot of time researching different ways of introducing her new baby to the dogs. They seemed to take quite an interest in her while she was pregnant, and overall, she had a positive experience. So deep down, she hoped that their behavior would stay the same after the birth of the baby. The couple decided to invite some friends over who had a child to test out the dog's reactions. It was an interesting experience. The dogs seemed intrigued by the baby, but as time wore on and the baby became tired, they too started getting quite irritable. It seemed like they didn't like the noisy disruption the baby was bringing to their usually serene household. This reaction only seemed to make the couple more anxious about the situation. As time passed, they began to fear the possibility that the baby just might not be compatible with the dogs. They would have to put measures in place in order to avoid any foreseen issues. This started with the preparation of the nursery. They managed to find a beautiful house on an old road with 3 bedrooms, 2 upstairs and 1 downstairs. So they decided to use the room next to theirs for the baby's room. That way they could keep a close eye on the child. When they moved in, they didn't let the dogs into the room at all. That way they could learn there was a boundary even before the baby came along. At first, Finn and Brody were quite confused by the fact that they weren't allowed into the room. This was the first time they couldn't follow their owner somewhere, but being the obedient dogs they were, they would wait patiently outside the door while their humans worked inside. This was just a precaution that the couple felt would be necessary so they could leave the baby in its room, and there would be no concern about how the dogs would behave. Lauren and Brandon also began to ensure that the dogs still got the same amount of attention as usual. They still went on their walks every day and got their cappuccinos at the local cafe every Sunday. The couple was adamant that their first children wouldn't feel neglected because of the incoming baby. One night, Lauren was awoken by a crying Finn. She was nudging her and desperately trying to catch her attention. It was at that moment that Lauren realized her bed was wet, her water had broken, and she was already in labor. The pair rushed off to the hospital. leaving their distressed canine friends with a bone to chew in their absence. When they returned, accompanied by an infant chair, it became immediately apparent that the dogs were curious about the new being. They could smell it. Brandon had to form a shield to calm them down enough so they could introduce the baby to them. That itself was a nerve-wracking experience, to say the least. The two dogs fought each other for space to sniff as much of the baby as they could. This resulted in the baby bursting into tears, and Lauren overreacting. She whisked the baby away from the dogs and took him up to the nursery for some privacy. Finn and Brody were really confused by what was happening. They tried to follow Lauren upstairs, but Brandon called them back. He wanted to give them some love and reassurance, but they weren't stupid. They knew there was a new person in the household, and they desperately wanted to check him out, to know if he was a friend or not, but Lauren was too scared. She really didn't want to regret a bad choice. The last thing she wanted was for the dogs to become agitated, so she tried her best to keep the Dalmatians away from the baby. However, one fateful night, closer to midnight, Lauren had just begun feeding her son when a dreadful crash jolted the stillness outside. In a panic, she called Brandon, who rushed to her side. Together, they peered outside and witnessed a severe car accident across the road. Brandon sprang into action, knowing he had to assist in any way he could. Feeling the urge to help as well, Lauren placed her son back in his crib and hurried downstairs. Unbeknownst to them, they left the nursery door ajar, unintentionally leaving the baby alone with Finn and Brody. This realization hit them too late, as they joined their neighbors in helping the car crash victims to safety. Only when they heard their son's cries did they remember him, and the sinking feeling in Lauren's stomach intensified. She grabbed Brandon, and they raced inside, heading upstairs to find the nursery door wide open. The dogs were still out of sight, but the baby's cries had ceased, leaving them anxious and uncertain about what they would discover next. They entered the room, greeted by a heartwarming scene that left them breathless. Finn had nestled her head in the crib, tenderly comforting the now content baby, while Brody gently rocked the crib with his nudges. As the dogs sensed their owner's presence, their tails began to wag in delight. Their proud gaze locked onto Lauren and Brandon, radiating excitement at finally meeting their newest family member. With a protective stance, they watched over the infant, undisturbed by his earlier cries. It was evident to Lauren and Brandon that their dogs recognized the baby as part of their family and were resolute in their commitment to care for him. Overwhelmed with emotion, Lauren burst into tears and embraced her dogs. 9 months of anxiety had led to this moment, and her worries had proved unfounded. She now understood that trusting her loyal canine companions to watch over the new addition to the family was the right decision. Their evident love for the baby reassured her, and she knew she could entrust them with his well-being without hesitation.